Buddy Scoutcraft here again. Mishmash Monday. Let's get downstairs and get started. Hey, like I said, it's Mishmash Monday. We got a few things to get to today. The first thing is that during the comments from last video that we did, I saw that a good friend of the show by the name of Cindy Berg had mentioned to me, she says, you know, the way you talk about broken taps, it sounds like you speak from experience. And it's true. When I first started off, I did have an experience with a break in a tap or two, and that's because I was using a cheap tap set. Now, sometimes you'll see these tap sets advertised like this one here, you know, a 40-piece tap set for $16.99 or something. And you say, you know, how could they do that? And the reason is because they're inferior taps. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Now, there are plenty of tools out there that you can buy inexpensive tools, like a socket set, and you can get by with an inexpensive socket set. You know, a nice socket set, it makes things a little bit better, but believe me, it's not night and day like it is with what I'm about to show you. This is my first tap set. This here, you could see, was a Buffalo. And believe it or not, it wasn't super bad because it was made in Taiwan, which is a step above China. But these here were my first tap and die set. And these are carbon steel taps. And the problem with carbon steel taps is they tend to be a little bit on the brittle side. And that's a problem when you're tapping. Now, you could see here, this one here was a broken tap. And it can be a nightmare, especially with the smaller ones. Now, a set like this is great because it's inexpensive if you're just trying to get a lot of sizes and things like this. This is good for re-threading or chasing threads, meaning it's already tapped and threaded and you just want to clean up the threads. That's where these come in handy and stuff. But for cutting new threads, in especially steel or stainless steel or something, you need to get, what I like is high-speed steel. That's the only stuff I work with now. And high-speed steel, USA made. This was a gift from Jeff and Dar. And you can see it's a USA tap here. And these, forget it. When you move up to a high-speed steel tap, it's a whole different world. And that's why. And the same thing with blades. When you're talking about circular saw blades, remember them old circular saw blades? Those were horrible. You know, you want to stay away from them. Get yourself a carbide tip blade. It changes everything. Before you go out and buy a nice high-speed steel set, you know, there's a lot of sizes you'll never use. Find out the sizes you use most often. Like with me, it's 1/4 inch, 3/8 by 16. You get a couple sizes, get some really good taps in that size, and then the other ones you could keep just in case of an emergency. You can have the less expensive ones, but the ones you're going to use all the time, get a good tap set. Next up, a good friend of the show, Brian O'Hare. He sent me a pair of tweezers. You ever see a pair of tweezers like this? There are different types of tweezers, different shapes. They're always good to have around the shop. These are paddle tweezers. Believe it or not, we used to use these a lot in stamp collecting. They have a little paddle end over here and it'll spring. But you ever see a pair like these? You might be thinking, yeah, that looks like a standard pair of tweezers, but what makes these unusual is the size. And you can see here the size of how big they are. Here's those paddle tweezers that we had before. These are some monster tweezers. And, you know, it's pretty interesting because it's exactly in scale with the normal size tweezer. And you can see these are stainless steel. Let me get you can see it says stainless right there. And they're made in Pakistan. And over here you can see that it's very faint, but they're made in Pakistan. Now, Pakistan's known for they make almost like two types of, they either make really junk stuff, you know, for the mass market, you know, like especially in cast iron and stuff, or they make some pretty decent surgical tools and things like that, stainless. So it's, you know, it depends what you get from Pakistan. But these tweezers are really nice. They're, you know, well made and pretty interesting, especially for the size of them. Okay, huh? Last week while I was upstate on my property, I was looking at a oak tree that I had planted up there. Was given to me by my neighbor before she moved. She had it in a bucket and she said, would you like this oak tree? And so we planted it on the property, kind of remember, and it's coming along good, but I had to take off some rope, some guide wires I had to support the tree until it got to this height. When I was taking it off, I found this caterpillar in there, and I looked at the caterpillar, and it turns out it was a gypsy moth caterpillar. And so I was doing some research on it, and I have to tell you something. Gypsy Moths, very interesting history on them. And it turns out that a gentleman by the name of Leopold Trouvelot he was born in France. he came over to the United States. He settled in a town called Medford, Massachusetts in about 1855, and he was a lithographer. But as his hobby, he would raise silkworms. Remember, back then, a lot of people were trying to make some, extra money or to discover something. So he had a 5-acre lot behind his house, a nice little house. And what he did was he raised all types of silkworms and things like that. And now, unfortunately, a lot of the birds were eating his silkworms and stuff. So he was trying to figure out a way to make a more productive silkworm that was had less desire that the birds would eat them. So what he did was he picked up, went back to France and picked up some Gypsy Moths, and he brought them over here thinking that he would mix the two and breed a super larvae that would spin a lot of silk, similar to the killer bee experiment that happened. You remember that? Well, he started getting these moths, and he had them contained, and then somehow in about 1867, the moths, the gypsy moth embryos, somehow got loose or whatever. They still don't know exactly how it happened. A gust of wind, some people wrote, or it might have got away. Anyway, they got away, and the gypsy moths then started to, once they got away, they started to do what they do, which is they breed, they are ravenous with trees. So now a gypsy moth has a few stages. What they do is they lay these little cocoon sacks that you'll see on trees. They look like white puffy cotton. In that little sack, there's between 500 and 1,000 eggs. And when these eggs start to hatch, they get these little miniature caterpillars that climb up the tree, and they ravage the tree until they become big caterpillars. Then they come down and they become moths, and then the moths repeat the cycle. So they can eat a whole tree, all the leaves, the foliage, off of one tree in less than 3 days. It's amazing, and it's scary. Some of you know what I'm talking about because you've had the infestation before. So this is something you have to look out for. If you see these little white sacks hanging off the tree, you got to take them off, and you got to put them in a jar of soapy water. And if you have any kind of infestation, this can really damage your property. And now it started off in Massachusetts. About less than 10 years after he started experimenting with these gypsy moths, he moved away. He moved to Cambridge. But that street that he lived on in Medford was totally devastated. All the trees were killed by these moths. And there was so many of them, millions of them, that they had it cost $1 million at the time to get rid of them. So, but now we're having a big infestation again. They're traveling across the United States and Canada. Keep an eye out for them. The gypsy moth, interesting, but very dangerous. A friend of the show by the name of 594 Bolt had saw me when I was wrapping up that hammer handle with the aluminum can, how I wrap it around. He said, Governor Cuomo will be happy that you're not getting a nickel return on that those cans, But I have to tell you something, a funny story about living here in the city is that, I'm not a real soda drinker, but I do love a glass of soda when I have pizza. It's like one of those things. So whenever I do, I might go through maybe a bottle or a couple cans a month. That's it, but I do keep I keep the bottles here. And what I do is I take the bottle and I cut the label off, and then I usually cut up the bottle before I throw it into the recycle bin. And the reason I do that is because I don't know if you have this where you live, but in the big cities, we have these people that are can collectors. And they started off fine, because they're making their money. It's 5 cents per can or bottle that they recover. But what happened was, I'm not going to return them because like I said, I go 1 or 2 bottles, maybe 10, 15 cents worth of cans or bottles a month. You think I'm going to stand on that line with the homeless guys and the people with 500 cans ahead of me? I'm going to stand there for 20 minutes for 50. It ain't going to happen. So I throw it away. But what was happening was they're quite brazen, these people. If you don't live in a big city, you don't know what I'm talking about. But not only do they will come into your alleyway and go through your garbage looking for these plastic cans and bottles, but they'll also, and this is what annoyed me the most, they'll rip open your garbage in front of your house, and then they'll take out what they want, And they used to open up the bag, take it out, and tie up the bag. That was fine. Nobody was, you know, it didn't bother me. But now they were ripping holes and pulling it out of the hole in the side of the bag because it's easier than untying it. And then when the garbage men come to throw your garbage into the truck, they would spew garbage all over the street because there was now a hole in the bag. So that was it. I said, that's it. That, you know, now I make sure that then they look through the bag, and if they see a bottle that, you know, they can cash in, they'll take it. So there's nothing in mine but cat food cans, and so they haven't bothered it. But this is a problem, you know. This is, and you know, what are you going to do? These people they don't have any ID on them or something, and the police are the last thing the police are going to do is bother with them, especially with what's going on today. So it's kind of a strange thing. You have that where you live? Next up, about a year ago or so, my buddy Trader Joe, who good friend of mine, he's Charlie's owner. Trader Joe said, "You ever see a lock like this before?" And what this is they use these locks, it's like a padlock almost, but they use these on the railroad. Now remember what I was telling you about locks are only meant to keep out innocent people or honest people? Well, this here is what they use. So there's no key for these locks, but there is kind of a key because basically there's a little triangle bolt there, a triangle headed bolt and there's different shapes. Some are star shaped or whatever, and the key fits in here and it unscrews and the lock opens up, and that's how you get. So, you know, obviously, you know, we're going to see if we can open this one up or maybe make a key for it and see what it looks like when it's open. Now, I was thinking of making a special key and taking it to the milling machine and milling out a triangle out of a piece of aluminum. But all I did was I took I have a bunch of deep sockets here, and I used a 12 millimeter deep socket, and I put it in here, and lo and behold, it fits just like a key. So when I unscrewed it, it won't come out all the way. The screw opens up, and that's how the padlock opens, you can see. And when they want to close it, you put this in like this, and then you take I'm sure they have a key, but it's similar to this, and you just screw it down. It screws the bolt into that little pocket there, like we just did, and now that's secure. It can't come out until... So, in actuality, with this type of triangle, all you need is a 12 millimeter socket. But again, like I said, they're only meant to keep out honest people. So, pretty interesting how these locks work, and the fact that they still use these today on the railroads. Now, I was about to call this done on here, just on that quick demonstration, but then I said, you know what? It's funny how this didn't rust at all on here. And then I looked over here and I saw on this little edge, see that edge right there? I said, it looks like a little bronze or something. So I took it over to the wire wheel real quick, and look at that. It's bronze underneath. So, you know, how nice is that? So let's get rid of this silver paint, little paint remover, and let's see if we can't get this back to the glory it should be. Now, you know my favorite part. Remember what this lock looked like before we started. And we're calling this project done. What a difference, huh? Talk about from rags to riches on this one. This is they used to call these Rayco locks, but now it was bought over by Sevtran, and you could see the price of these things. You know, they still make them today. You could still buy them. The exact same lock. They come in brass. They come, I think, in zinc. Now remember, this is the triangle one. They also have a hex one. They have different ones, and I think these are meant to lock the signals, things like that. But it works really well. I lubricated it a little bit, and it's just it's a sweetheart of a lock, you know, if you want to call it that. Again, it serves its own purpose for whatever it does, but pretty interesting, huh? Looks really nice, doesn't it, without the gray paint on it and stuff, and buffed it out a little bit. So there we go, our Rayco railroad signal. Okay, we got a little thunder shower kicking up. We got the storm flag out. You can see the clouds up there. It looks a little ominous over. Anyway, thanks very much for tuning in. I hope you have a nice day. Take care now. Bye-bye.